Yes, we are live on this glorious Thursday from Florida. This is Toni Weel, and I have a guest with us, and I'm very excited to announce him, Luccas, and I don't know if I pronounce his name correctly, but it sounds like Laquintinie. I'm doing it the Dutch way. How would you pronounce it?
Yeah, that's close enough. Here in Brazil, my family has always said Laquintinie, but
Okay.
the name is French, and I'm pretty sure the right pronunciation is even a third option than what we just said. So,
okay, well, it's a beautiful last name. I'll kept it simple with Weel, W-E-E-L. Everybody always wants to put an H in it. It was interesting because I was a motorcycle rider. So yeah. We had Luccas on the podcast before, talking about his book, a little book about fasting. And he wrote another book after that. We haven't talked about that, but when he showed me, or actually I saw it last week, his what is it, 4 pages about self-empowerment manifesto. And I started reading that, and I was like, oh my gosh, everybody needs to read this. So I started to buy it for other people and just give it away, give it to my clients. And I feel it helps you so much to get, for me to get grounded, to realize things. And then the funny thing was, only yesterday I was looking on Luccas's Facebook page, and there I saw another writing, Peaceful Revolution. So curious as I am, had to have it. Now, guys, these little books, ebooks, writings, they're only $3. So the link is at the bottom of the description. So absolutely do get it. It is beautiful. And then I start reading Peaceful Revolution, and I let Luccas talk about it, but I will tell you what it reminded me of. But I already told him, my gosh, this is like a blueprint to the Garden of Eden. It is so simple, and it is actually what we have been talking about quite a bit. Now, I started talking, and I haven't even checked if people can actually hear me, but let's just presume they can. Maybe I should have waited a little longer for more people to pop up. And we don't have Sarah here today. She is actually out camping in the wilderness, but she told me it wasn't really camping, it was more glamping. And yeah, it's not a time anymore to have a small tent, usually leaking, and a tiny air mattress that always loses its air. That was how I went camping. So yeah, I love the word glamping, but I think she's in a cabin somewhere, and having a great time. And she said if she could, she would try to come on, but we shall see. Okay, Ingrid, it's good that you can hear me. Today Sarah is not on, but we have Luccas with us, and he has a lot to share. So Luccas, tell me, what made you write the Self-Empowerment Manifesto?
well, actually, I wrote it for myself at first, because although I write on Facebook regularly, and I have published a few books and write these little essays every now and then, booklets, however we want to call those shorter ones. I do have my own journals and like tons and tons of drafts and writings that I haven't ever shared yet. I just get these waves of inspiration, and it literally comes in waves. And often when I'm meditating afterwards, throughout the day, it's consistently inconsistent, I guess, or the opposite, however we want to say it. And yeah, I wrote it a few weeks ago. It was more like several topics. It wasn't as spread out into text as it is now. And I just left it be with the other notes. And then, do you want more details about what exactly triggered it,
Yeah,
or?
yeah, give it to us. I mean, we can probably all relate to it and see the importance of realizing certain things, because so often we have life, it's just getting away from us. And I mean, I don't want to say I'm in the business of healing, but I talk to so many people who struggle
Mhm,
with, yeah, you could say the daily things in life. And
mhm.
sometimes you just have to take a step back and being aware. And I think that what you wrote definitely helped with that.
Hmm. Yeah, I do make a point in my life to always start the day with some meditation and yoga, because that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the day for me. Whenever I would have skipped it more so as an experiment, I just saw how easily it was to, well, like you said, kind of get lost in the energies of the day and other people's. We kind of forget, right, that we're aware here. One thing that I like to notice is the breathing. Sometimes I catch myself through the day, like, when was the last time that I breathed a conscious breath, right? When was the last time that I felt that I was being here, right? Like you said, that I stopped and paid attention to what was going on. But it was July the 1st, actually. It was very interesting because I was about to turn off my computer and go to sleep. It was shortly past midnight, and I noticed the near full moon. It was starting to appear outside my window, and I just had this certain urge to look into that draft of the. It wasn't called the Self-Empowerment Manifesto by then, but I just felt like looking at it. And next thing you know, I was halfway through editing it, and I just felt that I felt inclined to share it. So I kind of pulled an all-nighter writing it for a few hours, and I just rode that wave of inspiration and decided to share with the world. So it was a very spontaneous thing.
Yeah, it's when I'm reading here one of the paragraphs. I must deliberately change my patterns, cycles, and routines. I must disengage from unconscious loops of indulgence and distraction. I must let go of my old self-imposed beliefs, dogma, and limitations. Now, that is the words, you understand them, but then it's like, okay, and how do I do that?
Hmm. Well, one
Meditation,
of yeah,
meditation, grounding.
yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, anything can be a meditation, right? If you're present for it, basically, you could meditate washing the dishes, or some people like to watch the clouds. But I think the breathing really is the most powerful for me, because I was talking about cycles there, right? And patterns. And our very breathing is a pattern, right? How many breaths per second, per minute, the duration of each breath, the depth of it. And this can also connect to the whole talk about food, right? Because if people are like constipated and filled with toxins, they can't even expand their diaphragm properly. And their cells are like clogged with mucus. So the oxygen and the blood doesn't reach them properly, right? You can explain it better than me, the whole thing about the blood and the lymphatic system, right? So the more I pay attention to the breathing, the more aware I become of myself. And the more we practice being present throughout the days, we start observing these cycles and these patterns. We see that we always eat at the same time. We're always triggered by the same things, by the same word, people. We start to notice these things. And I think this is the first step, becoming aware of it, right? Because we cannot change something that we're unaware of. And then I would say that the next step would be to deliberately start changing or breaking these cycles and patterns. And we can start small. For example, if you're unsatisfied with what you've been eating, a very simple thing would be to not eat a certain food for a day or a week. 1 day of fasting would be a great reset, or 1 day of eating only fruit, for example. There are many things we could talk about, really. Say you're staying up late consistently. If you went to sleep earlier, you would be changing the pattern of the whole thing. Or if you wake up earlier, or if you did something different, I don't know, maybe you use the same route to go to work or school or whatever every day. You could do a different one. You could buy your produce at a different grocery store. There are many things throughout the day that when we pay attention, we've always been doing the same thing over and over. And sometimes just doing things differently allows us to also see things differently from a different perspective. And this is kind of like a feng shui, I guess. You change things, the order of things, and you get a different flow of energy. And like I was saying at the beginning, I believe the breathing is the most easy and fundamental way of going about it, because it's what we're always doing, right? It's just a matter of whether we're doing consciously or not. And what I noticed is that just by changing my breathing pattern, or just by being aware of it, I start to create ripples in the rest of my life. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. I was just thinking about patterns. I am the worst person to have a pattern. It's like in all my years, I've never been able to do it. I just go with the flow. I go with what's feeling right. And about meditation, it is like I had time that I had to drive like hours at a time, and when I arrived, I couldn't remember anything of going from point A to point B and what I saw on the road, because actually I was in a state of, you could almost say, meditation, because I had a lot of thoughts, and it was I was a designer. My best designs always appeared then. And the funny thing was, right before I fell asleep. And but I just never want to go deliberately into meditation, sit still, close your eyes, or look at a certain point. And at those times when I tried to do it deliberately, my mind was going a mile a minute, so I gave up on that. But later on, I realized that when you do something that you enjoy, it's interesting how the mind can go still at those times.
Yeah, I think even athletes talk about being in the zone, or creative people talk about flow states, right? I think it's that idea of basically being in alignment with what you love or something that you enjoy, and you're basically present for it. You're focused on it, right? You eliminate the distractions. So not everyone has to sit for an hour or whatever, right? Anything can be a form of meditation. And like you said, I think it's a very valuable realization to have.
Yeah, I think it was about 50 years later. We just briefly before we started, we talked about the hippie era, and how that was for us in the Netherlands was probably different than here in the U.S. And the people were very, aware in meditation, breathing, being vegetarian or vegan even, and but it never got anywhere. It's like we all changed. I changed, I started to ride a motorcycle. I was with different people. I never got into the bar scene crowd, because that was not my thing. I was always a nature person. But it's like with the Self-Empower Manifesto, I think it gets you back. It's like getting you back on track. Because I talk with so many people who are so stressed out and live with very narcissistic people, a lot of traumas. And at some point, you just have to let that all go. And I know it's easier said than done. But when you start reading these things, you become more aware of what you actually can do instead of what you cannot do.
Yeah, I think it's also important throughout the day to it could be a meditation, it could be reciting affirmations, it could be listening to a song, it could be watching the sky. Like we were talking about patterns before, right? It's very easy to kind of get lost on it. So the more we have these little moments throughout the day where we remind ourselves of like what's important to us and what we would like to change, I think the easier it becomes to do small adjustments. And sometimes that's all you can do in a day, right? A small adjustment, but those little things can add up throughout the time. So the idea of the manifesto would be something like that, something to, well, ideally we want to be naturally inspired, right? We want to be so attuned to our dream or our vision that we're basically living our life in alignment with it. But most of us are not quite there yet, right? Like you said, we're living in the city. There are all of these traumas that we have accumulated, the people around us, the environment or the community is not ideal. So during those times, I think it's very important to have these little practices or affirmations, sentences, anything that you can tap into that kind of holds you back into alignment, even if only for a minute. And then the more you do that throughout the day, the easier it is to become aware of these patterns and little key moments where you can make a change, because whether we like it or not, we're always making choices, right? We always have, to some degree, opportunities that we often just never pay attention. It's like, I don't know, you're thinking, what do you want to have for dinner? You do have a choice to eat healthier, right? If you actually stop in that moment when you're, I don't know, in the grocery store with getting something out of the shelf, you can actually stop there for a moment and think, do I really want to eat these today? And that can become like a key moment where you can make a better choice and then start disengaging from a loop. But it's easy to just get caught up in the whole thing, right? And then you just remember the next day, oh, maybe I shouldn't have eaten that yesterday. So the idea of the manifesto and of any other little practice or meditation we can get our hands on and that makes sense for us is to get these moments of awareness becoming more frequent, so we can also observe these little moments when we can make change. And that's more or less how it makes sense for me, this idea of changing our lives and gradually making small adjustments to shift things.
What if we make the small adjustments by, I just counted the paragraph that you are in here, there are 21. So 21 days. 21 days to a change. Every day you read one. Every day that you understand that one, that particular one.
That sounds powerful.
I'm sorry?
That sounds powerful. I mean, I read once that it takes something like, I don't remember the exact number, but it's something like between 20 and 40 days, they say, to like create a new habit or something like that.
Yeah.
Something about our brain, I guess.
I like the number 21 too.
Yeah, those multiples of 3 and 7, they're nice.
Yeah. And it so much leads into your peaceful revolution, where actually at the end of your writings, at the end of the essay, it's 10 pages, you come back to where you would start with the self-empowerment manifesto, as in changing yourself, therefore changing what is around us. And we talked about that a lot. I talk about that with people one-on-one. We talk about it in the groups, in the chats on the podcast. So that is a good plan. And my gosh, you I'm actually stunned. What can I say? I'm lost for words.
Well, I
Yeah,
think,
well, when you look at, when I start reading that, and it's getting, you get actually to the point as what, with the responsibility that we have for ourselves. And then I came to the last pages, and I was like, yeah, it is like a reverse pyramid, and you start at the bottom. And that is where you ended your essay with, that when we want to change anything, you have to change with ourselves. And this is actually what I grew up with. This is what my mother always said, you want to change the world, you have to start with yourself. That was all she said. Those were the only words. She didn't tell me how to do it. But it kind of always stuck in my mind. And so many years later, now realizing how absolutely true that is, and consciously knowing it, not, but it was always on my mind. You want to change something, then start with yourself.
well, I think it ultimately goes back to that thing about force, right? If you force someone to change, it's not a very natural thing, right? But if you change yourself and you become an example, you can inspire people to want to change themselves. So we have always observed that when people try to use force to control, things eventually fall apart, right? It's only when that desire, that inspiration comes from within, that we can make change that is actually everlasting. At least that's the way I see it.
I think that we naturally know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right about that too. And how much guidance do we need? I mean, growing up in the Netherlands, it was like you were taken care of from the crib to the grave. That was a saying there. You will always be taken care of. The government will do it. You don't need to worry. You always, have your health insurance, have your pension. You'll be good till the end of life. And that was an attitude that people started to have. And this already started back in the 50s. And it only got worse. People now finding out that their pension has been cut. The health insurance is not there anymore as it was, and things have changed, so people cannot rely on it. But it actually started out as they not relying on themselves anymore to do the things. And I found it, I even as a child, I wanted to do everything that was necessary to survive in life. If that was building a house or fixing a car or a motorcycle, I wanted to be able to do that. And right now we hire people for anything and everything. And it's like what you mentioned, we don't even have the skills, and don't even want to have the skills because it's all done for us anyway. So it's kind of, that is why I started with the Garden of Eden.social and started all these groups, and hope to get a little back in that we can share what can be done, what can we do ourselves, how can we change our lives. And and Luccas now has his own group there, where he will be sharing his writings. And they always show up on the news feed. So I urge everybody to go to gardenofeden.social, little plug there, because I think we have the opportunity to build something there and help people actually with everything that you write in Peaceful Revolution.
Yeah, I think when we look at the animals and nature, it also reminds us of these concepts that, right? You said that we don't really need any teachings or guidance in a sense. And that's true, right? No animals need it either. They know what to eat, they know what to do, they know how to build their nests, they know when to migrate and when to not migrate. And I think it's that little connection that we seem to have lost along the way or disconnected from. And now we're all confused around not knowing what to do and relying on others for everything, right? It's like we're becoming more and more dependent on these tools and these gadgets and these structures that we have built. And the more we learn how to do things for ourselves, the more we tap into our own power, right? So that's a constructions noise. Is that too loud?
I'm sorry, is that too what?
Oh, you cannot hear it? Okay, good.
I didn't hear all the words. You have a little echo, so.
Oh, okay. Oh, I lost my train of thought.
That is okay. Mine is still there. When you were mentioning about animals, I had to think about a video I saw many years ago, and that was about animals, different kind of animals, from elephants to giraffes to monkeys, all kinds of different animals. They all went to an area where the tree had fruits that were ripened, and when they ripened, they had alcohol in it. And so these animals went there all at the same time in that season when that fruit was ripe. And when fruit is ripe, it's not for a long time. It's a very short time.
Mhm.
And they were all eating of it, and they got all drunk. And I was like, and this was, not in what we consider a civilized world. This was somewhere in way away in nature. And it's interesting that even a reporter found it. But yeah, the village people knew about that, and it was hilarious to see. Now, of course, it's not good that these animals get healthy, but I was like, oh heck, it's only once a year.
I mean,
Even the idea that all these different animals knew when to go when. And we have lost so much of that intuitive feeling for things. We barely know, if a certain fruit grows on a bush or a tree, or what the season is. We lost that connection. We go to the grocery store, and it's like, oh hey, it must be grape season. But now we see grapes throughout the years, and we see watermelon throughout the years. But actually, it's only in the last few years. Before that was really a watermelon season.
yeah.
And you only saw grapes or cherries at a certain month. But now it's I've been able to get it, constantly. Not that the taste is that great, because it's not the natural way of growing it.
Mhm.
But anyway, back to the animals. It's that intuition. They know what to do. They know what to do when they give birth. And when I gave birth, all the adults, because I was only 19 years old, all the adults around me, they knew better than I did. And it was an awful time, and it should have been the most beautiful time of my life, with giving birth and having this small creature that is depending on you. And it was not a great time. And and this is how we grow up. We lose all that connection. And now for me, with growing some, even if it's only a few fruits, and even if it's in pots, I realize more and more how everything works. And yeah, I should have figured that out many years ago, but figuring it out now. But any time is a good time to learn.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, in a way, the whole hippie thing did plant a lot of seeds, right? So this whole talk about a peaceful revolution, it doesn't necessarily have to happen in our lifetime, right? I think, I don't know how long it could take, but I think the whole purpose of it is just like changing ourselves, right? And just trusting other people to eventually change themselves as well. Ultimately, we can only do what we're able to, right? So the more we stay true to ourselves, the more we do our own part. I think eventually we just have to trust in the rest, right? Trust in the world. And I think that's the point where we start arranging ourselves in communities, right? Because even if we cannot change the whole world, we can create a little oasis or a little pocket of paradise to live consciously with other people. So that could be a first step.
Well, you mentioned about when we previously spoke about the hippie time, when the 60s, when people had that idea and that it was infiltrated, but now you see there's so much division between people. It is vegan and meat eaters, and it's in politics, it's in religion, and everything is so divided. People now still, I've been called a hippie, even at my age now. Oh yeah, that hippie there, and I was, oh okay, I'm proud of it, proud that people would even say that, because I don't have the negativity that they wanted us to, or wanted people who were called a hippie assign that negativity to it, because it's, I wasn't about drugs. I was about the animals. I was about healthy food in communities where we live together, where we share together, and where it was not about money and not about the fear of not having money or not having food or a roof over your head. All working together to have a beautiful life. And but now we're thinking about the same communities, about the same things, minus the drugs. But and you mentioned infiltration with the drugs. It could be. I stayed away from anything drugs, although around me there was a lot of back then LSD, hashish, which was a normal thing. I didn't like it. I didn't like the feel of, not being aware of my surroundings. And some people say, well, it's good to use it to go inside, but for me it was like, no, I don't need it. I don't want it. But now it's like, okay, we're considering again, we're building, a lot of people are building communities in the tropics, not so much here in the United States, but further south. And they will, I believe they will absolutely succeed, but it is so few. There are so few, and yeah, how can we live in this? People talk about living in the matrix. I mean, my husband still has a job, but it is something that he loves to do. Would it be a good thing because he delivers to grocery stores? That's debatable. And these big monsters on the road guzzling fuel, that's debatable. But heck, you have to do in your life what you like. It's only a few more years before he really retires. But it is like, how can we change? I mean, you mentioned modern cities are essentially energy forms with a similar structure to prisons, and that we are like free range animals and have some degree of walking around, but you still have everything around you. It's like, I want to see it happen, and I believe, of course I believe it will happen, because it has to happen. The world cannot keep going as it does. What you mentioned, we talk about the people in control, or where we think that they are in control and that we are in the matrix, so they have a say about what we do and how we do it. But still, I believe I live a happy life. I'm very happy with what we've built here in my surroundings, even my tiny garden with a few fruit trees. And I talk with people about this, and that, I think that is the tiny ripple effect that you can have. And but the way things are right now, I don't know what needs to, I know what needs to change, but that it goes from us changing and then outwards. But my gosh, so many people are against, so many people are so attached to the TV, to all their worries and all their trauma, and it's like, I can't find a word for it right now.
The thing about drugs you mentioned earlier, the way I see about it, it also connects with this whole thing about being more autonomous individuals. Because, like, if you're using a drug to connect with yourself, you're still relying on something, right, to establish that connection. And this is where I see value in meditating or doing what you love, whatever it is, to connect with that essence without relying on something else. I think this is true empowerment. And this may be one of the reasons the whole hippie thing didn't really succeed, because if you're always relying on substances to feel a certain way, you're not really feeling that way yourself, right? So I think this could be a little point to take notice. And one of the reasons I like breathing exercises so much, because I can tap into those frequencies of love and bliss by myself, right, without having to ingest anything. And that's very empowering and gives a real taste of freedom. But what you were talking about before?
Yeah, that is actually what you just mentioned. We talk about substances, we were talking about drugs, but it's also with alcohol. And I've never been drunk, and I don't like alcohol.
Me neither.
And that was another thing. And I was told, you're no fun. And I'm like, well, I'm having fun. So yeah, I mean,
the same
it wasn't,
experience here.
yeah, being drunk, it was like you were more fun. And it was like, but that's not me. So I was not, I didn't go to bars to get drunk. I love dancing. I did go to establishments back then, not really, that was before the discos. And I went out dancing. I mean, I could dance in my house too, but I thought that was fun. And I think that it is dancing, the meditation, and dancing can be meditation too.
Of course.
But yeah, not to have to rely on substances, and food is included. I mean, my big thing is the right diet, and feeling different you feel so different when you eat fruit than when you would eat meat in a cooked meal. And it's a night and day difference. But people, they keep justifying what they need to eat because they cannot do without. And it is, you mentioned that slavery. Let me see what slavery was never abolished, but in a way, we are still slaves to all the things that we are attached to. And I think when you don't have that attachment, it's and we are attached to stuff too. I mean, we have little things that go back to even our childhood, and we want to keep having it, physically having it. Well, it doesn't matter. It's in your mind. You remember, so you don't need to have it physical.
Mm-hmm.
But we overcoming all these attachments and addictions to whatever it is. It's not easy to give it up. And I think that is, we make a day by day plan, and it's little steps to get to a different world. And yeah, we can only start with ourselves.
Yeah, and I think one thing that it's also empowering to realize is that regardless of what you are doing, you can always change the way you are doing. And I think that's the easiest way to change your frequency or your mindset is in your attitude, right? Because like you said, every day we can do little changes and small progress. So it really boils down to what's your attitude towards life, right? Are you just living another day, or are you deliberately committing yourself to evolve or progress or keep learning and healing yourself, right? Because some people are just defeated, right? They wake up and they just go through the motions. So I really think it's important to have that feeling of.
And that is actually with most people. And what I found, that is personal, what I found is that, and I've been going through all kinds of diets, from healthy to not so healthy, but I was already, this is amazing, I was already a raw vegan, but I still had high proteins and high fats in my diet. And it was a dark world for me. I wasn't feeling well, I was depressed, and when I started eliminating the nuts and the seeds and the other fats, and it was only fruit, it was like something was lifted, and I could see things differently. So that was for me the power of fruit that changed
Oh,
the higher frequencies.
yeah, it's quite literally right. The whole proteins and the fats are more heavy or dense, so it was literally weighting you down, in a sense.
It is. Now, you mentioned before that you were not someone who would live on all fruit. Would you share what you eat in a day?
Well, I have been having some vegetable soups every now and then. It's winter over here, and I'm not entirely raw vegan yet, but otherwise, I have had the same experience about the nuts and the seeds. I do eat them every now and then, but I do feel how heavy they are. So it's like after I eat them a few times, I have to go some time without them until I think it's a good idea again. And then I realize it wasn't as much. But as far as fruit goes, I think I mostly have bananas and oranges. That's what I've been having lately. As far as what's good here, I usually only eat once in a day, so I'm essentially water or dry fasting for 20-ish hours, and then I just have one meal. I've been having lots of sprouts and salads lately, and yeah, I think the major things that I've noticed was first when I ditched the animal products, and then when I stopped with the grains and the beans. Those two are very mucus forming for me, but it's just a process, right? The more you keep simplifying and going back to the raw foods, the more you realize how everything else that you thought it was healthy was actually not healthy at all. So the more healthy you become, the more you realize how these different substances have an effect on you. And it's just then going back to that commitment. Okay, so how committed am I to my health? What am I willing to let go? What are these addictions? How do I go about releasing them? And it's that challenge that we've all been going through one way or another. But yeah, I do like the mostly, if not all, fruits. I'm still experimenting to which degrees I want to have some salads and the nuts, or not even the nuts, more like the seeds, mostly sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds is what I like. And I have been enjoying sprouts a lot, especially when it gets a little colder. And living in the city, it's one of the freshest things I can have, essentially, right? If we have little space, there's only so much food we can grow, but everyone can grow sprouts in their kitchen. So I kind of like that perspective, although I don't see them as the optimal food that fruit is. Um, just that sometimes it's challenging to find good fruit. So you kind of get in that zone of, okay, I'm not in an optimal environment yet. So what's the best that I can do here? But suppose, when I have my own land, perhaps, or am I part of a community, I can see the 100% fruit being the optimal way of going about it, because it truly is when I feel my best and the most highest energy, because it is the only thing that makes sense, right? If we have to cook something or put salt on it, then it's not entirely natural, right? We don't really enjoy it. And this, when we think about the seeds and the nuts and even plants and vegetables, it's like it doesn't entirely make sense to eat them, right? You don't see a tree and you think, those leaves look yummy. Fruit is like the only thing that is appealing to us in its natural state, and we don't have to kill the tree to eat the fruit, right? It just gives to us. So when you stop to look at it rationally, it really doesn't make sense to do anything else. And then it just becomes a matter of, okay, how long is it going to take for me to heal and and transform myself to release these addictions and actually commit to this lifestyle. And I'm getting closer to it every month and every year. But as of now, I still find myself having some vegetable soups every now and then in winter and relying more on salads. That's the gist of it.
Yeah, that is, there is always some kind of fruit. And what you mentioned with eating once a day, I have days that I barely eat, because it's not like here we go with patterns, I eat at that time. I don't. I'm working and then I hear my growling stomach, and it's like, oh yeah, I could eat something and I still have this or this in the fridge, because
That's the best way of going about it.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, that's the best way of going about it, right? Not planning everything. When do
Yeah,
you eat? When you're
yeah.
hungry.
I was the same with my travels. The first time I traveled from the Netherlands to the United States, I had not prepared anything. It was just go with the flow and go and see wherever I ended up. And realizing later that I missed a lot of the beautiful things. So I started doing a little bit more planning than what I usually did. And when I became actually a tour operator for motorcycle tours, I had to do a lot of planning. But, then I had seen so much of this. This is absolutely a beautiful country. And it has wonderful people that, I understood the planning. So now when I travel, and it's usually only a few days because I have animals, but with food, no, there's never really a planning. And it used to, because I love to cook, even, cook, it an expression, but preparing meals, even raw meals, and coming up with ideas. And I found that's not even important anymore. We don't need to put a whole bunch of stuff together and then thinking about, oh, what spice are we going to use, and if I use this, then the taste would be that. It's like, I do have salads in the fridge, and I put them all together and add some tomatoes and lemon to it, and here we go, we have a salad. And not worrying about all kinds of salad dressings, because it can be easy, and your taste start changing. It is like you taste more in especially when you have the good food. I just got seeds to all kinds of different lettuces, so I'm going to try that one out and use that, because we do need the lettuce for for the minerals, more minerals than fruit. So the salads are good.
Yeah, what you said is very important, the whole thing about our taste buds, because that's one of the things that stops many people, right? They think this is not tasty or as good as what they were used to, but the thing is that they were just being overstimulated, right? So we have to acknowledge that there's this period of recalibration, and the more we start, the more we become healthier, the more we reclaim our taste buds, the more we realize how perfect the fruit is, right? It doesn't need a sauce or anything to taste great if it was properly grown and harvested when ripe, ideally from your own backyard, but as close as possible.
I found that, and you do have to search for it, and I hope that the website can help with that, because I keep finding more and more farmers right here. There are even people almost right in my backyard who have a tree, and they have a ton of mangoes on it that they can't even eat them by themselves, and this is how we can share. I mean, my mango tree, last year it had 3 or 4 fruits. This year it has 13. But, next year it will have more. So it's not that much. I cannot live on it. I need those 13 in what is it, 2-3 days. But here you have farmers markets, and you see those more and more popping up, actually. And it's talk to those people. And it seems that every little town has a farmers market, and this is how you find more people who are growing things. And often the people on the farmers market gather it from, I wouldn't say farms in the area, because they're not even really farms. They just have more fruit than they can handle. But and this is how you get to know more people in the area. I always thought, when I just came here in this area, it was never my choice to live here. I just ended up here, couldn't leave for a while, and now I could, and it's like, no, I grounded here actually. Never expected that. Like, it's like they have the saying here, it grows on you, and it actually is.
Well, but I like what you said about finding more about the farmers market and everything, because like what we were talking about before, even if we're in the city, right, it's always the matter of what we're looking at, right? Because there's beauty everywhere, there's abundance everywhere, but two people could be living in the same buildings and have entirely different lives, right? If one is always watching the news and worrying about one thing or another, and buying their stuff on a general supermarket. The other one could be going for walks in parks and doing things differently. They could get to know little producers from farmers markets and always get their fresh fruits in one way or another. So even if the whole thing around us continues to be more or less the same, it seems that the more we deliberately pay attention to the things that are important to us, the more we start noticing them, and we start to find these little oases here and there, even in the middle of this system, as we call it, right? So there's always a bright side to everything.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where I love to talk to people about, what they're growing. And what the beauty is? The fruits that have grown with with passion from the person who takes care of it taste better.
Of course.
And that is, I even had that here when I give, I'm sometimes have somebody else water my plants because it needs to be done every day. They don't grow as well as when I do it because I talk to them. And I got, the mango tree, it's still a small tree, but it gets so much attention and love in good vibration that these mangoes are twice the size they normally would be. And no, it's not, because we put all kinds of stuff on it to make it grow. Actually, we didn't put anything on it. And they're so juicy, it's unbelievable. And when we had a week ago a whole bucket full of mangoes from a nearby farm, same thing. And they were sweet and juicy. Go to the mass-produced mangoes from the supermarkets, even if they are organic, they are different. They don't have that taste. So, there's love in that fruit, how crazy it may sound.
Well, it doesn't sound crazy at all, actually, because
Not
everything
to
is
us.
well, yeah, everything is energy, right? And
Yeah.
there's that popular saying that where attention goes, energy flows, and it's basically that, right? If you're putting your attention on that fruit, and if you're sending your vibration towards it, the fruit responds, right? It's it seems you're not entirely aware of these more subtle energy flows that happen, but they do. It's just like when you enter in a room and everyone is depressed or whatever, you kind of feel that the room is heavy, right? We actually feel these things. If you hug someone that doesn't want to be hugged, it's not going to feel nice. If you hug someone that loves you, it's gonna, you're gonna feel that energy. So it makes perfect sense for me that the fruits would respond the same way.
Yeah, but being aware of something like that, and when I talk to people about it, they are in awe that something like that is even possible, but yet it still makes sense to them. And the more people, I think that is a big that can make a lot of changes too. The more people become aware of all these little things, how it really works, the more they can get into it themselves.
Yeah,
and
that's
accept it, that this is what life is and what life should be.
mhm. One thing that I like to think is that the most nutritious thing that every mother gives to their children is the love that they put in the meals they cook. Because even if they're not, feeding them properly, I believe that the love that people receive from their parents is really one of the most nourishing things, even making a comparison to the fruits that we're growing, right? I think that's the vibration, right, of life and abundance, this love thing that we always struggle to define with words.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah. And love is in everything. It doesn't have to be well, you mentioned now the parents and the child, but love can be in everything. And
mhm.
it's it's not yeah, what is the word? I miss the English word for it. So never mind. It's but you understand what love is. I think we get the idea about, love is absolutely everything.
Yeah, I like to think of the sun. It's like it's undiscriminating. It doesn't put conditions on anything. It just shines its light. I feel love is something akin to that. It's just universal, or
It
at
is.
least it
Yeah.
helps to me to think of the sun as a comparison.
Well, it is part of life because without the sun there is no life. So to
Mhm.
me, yeah, that is love too. You don't want to be it right now with what is it in the 90s or in the mid 30s Celsius to be in it too long, but it still feels like being touched by the sun is it's love, and we do need it,
Definitely.
and we don't get enough. We don't get enough of it, and
Yes.
but yes, it's we are reaching the top of the hour. Did you already put I added your Linktree link at the bottom of the description. Did you add Peaceful Revolution on that Linktree page yet?
Yes. So on
Okay.
that, I have two pages actually. You could think there's the Amazon website where there's the physical copies there, and I have a Gumroad website. It's where I put the PDFs and the ebooks and all. So the link tree has a link to the Amazon and a link to the Gumroad,
Okay, good.
essentially.
So it's all there. And
Yes.
I always say, people, you really spent your $3 for each essay. And well, I have all the both books too, because they are very good. And but you outdid yourself again with your last two writings. And I would say do get it because it's life changing. It is what we need. That is why I said it's like a blueprint to the Garden of Eden. We create it.
Yes. It couldn't be any other way, right? Because if someone created for us, it wouldn't even be as enjoyable, I feel. It's kind of that feeling of what you get for free in a sense. It's not as good as what you earn, basically, right? So what also why health cannot be bought, right? You have to create it in your own life. So if we want to have paradise on earth, we simply have to make paradise on earth.
Yeah, it is always our own creation, and everything happens for a reason. If people are listening to that, it is something that you needed to hear today. That is how I see. That is why I don't I am marketing your books. But I still feel that when people need to read it, it will come in front of them. And so that is why I never really we talk about, what I do, because I am a health counselor, a detox specialist. I know a little about food and your body, and that is how I can help people. But I would not, advertise on Facebook other than, what we're talking about here.
Mhm.
And I do feel that when people need that information, mine or yours, it will show up in front of them at the right time, because that means that they are open to it.
Of course, it goes back to what we were talking before earlier, right? We cannot force people to change,
No,
but
no,
we can always extend a helping hand to those who ask for it. I think that's how it works, right?
absolutely, that too. And I have people who have asked for it, and I didn't have the answers as beautiful as you put them on paper. So that is why I find your writing so helpful.
Thank you. I mean, we all have our talents, right?
We do. We do.
And there are many other things that I'm not nearly as good at as with writing. So I guess I just have to capitalize on that to do my part, I guess.
Well, you are doing it, and I'm very happy that you were here, and that we had an opportunity to share more and about life and yeah, about the peaceful revolution. So I don't know if there were no questions today. It was kind of quiet. I see some people just popped in, and it's like, okay, we are at the end of our podcast, so you will have to, it will be on YouTube, so people can listen to it at any time. Even the chat is always there. I'll leave that up. I did have, so you still have a chance. I had a link at the top if you wanted to be here live and ask questions or ask a question in the chat. And if that doesn't pop up in the next minute, then I would say, I want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you, Luccas. I am sure that we will be talking a lot more even about things to come, and enjoying your writings on Facebook and in Garden of Eden. And again, Luccas has his own group in Garden of Eden. It's easy to find. If you go to gardenofeden.social, and it's not necessarily the group of Facebook, gardenofeden.social is its own social platform. And we can see there whatever we like because nobody can censor us there. If anybody is censoring anything, then it would be me. I am in control, but that is only if people, are being nasty. They would, but it hasn't happened. And actually it hasn't happened in the groups either. But yeah, it is, there was no .com domain available. And I think, social, yeah, it's a good
It makes
name.
sense.
Gardenofeden.social. So there is a lot more, and there's a lot more to come. I just added a course there. I will be putting up courses, and my gosh, Luccas, maybe we can even change your manifesto into a short course and get it out that way too.
Sounds good.
So there's a lot that we can do to bring awareness to everybody, and nice. It would be nice, whoever is listening, if you like and share, because I learned from YouTube that the more likes you have, the more people get to see it. I don't know how that all works, but just saying, if you like what we are saying, then like the video. And share if you want to bring Luccas's writings under, give it attention and show it to other people. And the link is at the bottom, even for his Facebook page. So Luccas, thank you for being here. Thanks everybody for being here. And much, much love to you all. And I would say till the next time.
Thank you, Toni. Are we still